Hi, Alan. How you doing?
I'm very well, Dave.
Yeah, great. Well, look, welcome to Legal Practice Intelligence, our channel. I mean, our viewers will be sort of thinking to themselves, Alan, do we know him? And you've probably seen Alan around and about. And I guess what we'll do is get you to do a bit of an explanation about what you do, who you are, the market, and how
Sure.
you help firms.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, and thanks for inviting me here on the program today. I think it's wonderful what you guys do. So fundamentally, I've been in I guess professional services software now for about 23 years, and now a lot of that is in the accounting market. But what I've discovered over the last, particularly over the last 5 to 6 years, is that there's a lot of well, there's more similarities than there are differences between the two professional markets. And so about 6.5 years ago, at least 7 years in September, so I've passed that miracle 5-year mark for successful business, whether a business is going to survive or not. I set up under the instruction, and I'll use the word instruction or advice, I guess, from my own accountant, because he said, look, we've known each other for 15 years. You've got so much good stuff in your head. Go out and package it up and help people, because as accountants and as legal firms, everybody's scratching their head these days. They're stress rich, time poor. Bundle up something where you could save time and energy, but add expertise. So I guess I created what I call Practice Connections Advisory, and I guess I'm as niche can be in this particular market, because in tax and accounting world, I do everything from an individual tax return through to country by country reporting, which only affects billion dollar and above turnover companies.
Okay.
And then legal firms is everything from sole practitioners up to the big guys when it comes to document management and process flows and workflows and everything in between.
That's really interesting. So, I mean, we both have sort of worked across the legal and accounting industries,
Yeah.
and for a number of years. And what do you think the differences in technology are?
The fundamental differences in the technology aren't, I mean, they're not huge. I mean, obviously you have the matter-centric versus client-centric approach of each different profession. But fundamentally, you're capturing time, you're capturing intellectual property, and you're keeping people out of jail. So, it's both the accounting profession um, and the legal profession. They speak very special languages. And this is what I talk about a lot. They speak very special languages. And in the profession, I talk about them being a lot like anxiety transfer specialists.
Yeah.
So if I've got a problem, I go to my accountant, and ideally the accountant sorts it out, or keeps me compliant, keeps me out of the newspapers, keeps me out of jail. It's the same kind of reason why you go to a legal firm as well. So it's kind of like, well, I have to come to you because I don't understand this whole relationship. And as the old saying goes, the client that represents himself has got a fool for a client, or it's along those things. And so, in essence, again, to take away from the legal profession, I'm the servant of all and of none when it comes to helping them, both professions, trying to navigate through the quagmire, because you can have document management, which is universal to both, and that's where all of your IP is kept. You then have the workflow management, so either the client and or the matter comes into the office, and you then have to work on that and follow that through, and that becomes your work. You live your billing, then you have to receipt the money that comes in, and etc. So the one fundamental difference, obviously, between legal and accounting, the legal side of things has got that addition of the trust accounting that has to come into play. But really, when you break down the nuts and bolts, they do fundamentally the same things.
I mean, I guess what some people sort of say is they say that there's some more advances on the legal side around business development type software and client management type software, because they're matters that come in, they're not repeatable. So there's a matter that comes in, and they're always in the cycle of getting brand new clients and new matters. And that's whereas an accountant has a client that just sort of lands there, and they work with them over a time, and they just did a different piece of work
Yep.
for them.
Yeah, no, that is a very true point, and it's an area that I actually just spoke about it. I did a keynote a couple of weeks back, and it was about the difference between a practice management and a client relationship management system. And I said to the accounting firms, look, all of the guys that are selling you software are utilizing client relationship management systems, but they're not selling that to you. They're selling something else to you. And when in turn, when you're dealing with your clients, you need to be able to understand where the next job is coming from, who referred that job into you in the first place. So the accounting market is very much a referral base, as to a great extent is the legal market. But to your point, you're 100% correct. The legal market always has to constantly not advertise, but they always have to have that next step, because it's not necessarily a recurring business. So it's not David coming back to me, for the next 50 years, giving me tax returns, self-managed superannuation, business advisory work. They're generally those one-off interactions, and that's the difference between the client and versus matter billing.
So interesting. I mean, what did you see? I mean, you've seen lots and lots of firms over the last 2 years. My goodness me, don't even want to talk too much about it. But gosh, what a challenge. What did you see? How did you see practices change across different firms? From point of view of workflows and technology over the last 2 years with law and with legal and accounting practices.
Yeah, look, the fastest answer to that one, David, is if you're familiar with, and as you would be, the Everett-Rogers diffusion of innovation curve, which talks about having the innovators down in the very bottom left, and they gradually go up as the technology becomes more and more taken on, I guess, in the marketplace, and then it tapers off the other side, where you end up being on the very, the laggards, the guys at the very end of that cycle. From the pandemic perspective, anybody that was at the left-hand side of that bell curve at the beginning of the pandemic came out of it a lot better and a lot easier than the people that were on the right-hand side of that. Because typically the guys that were on the left-hand side were utilizing generally cloud technology, which enabled them to be more responsive and more capable and faster to respond, but then also to be able to just simply pick up the laptop and run home and set up shop, in essence, without any kind of disruptions. Whereas those larger firms that maybe they did have remote access, but generally only for 1 or 2 users concurrently, rather than 5, 10, 15, 200 people concurrently, they had a big knee-jerk reaction, I guess is the way to describe it, to basically say, well, okay, we're stuffed. We have to buy servers. We have to buy Citrix licenses. We've got to get everything. And the disruption factor that that entailed was quite dramatic. So that if it's worthwhile taking a look at that Everett-Rogers diffusion of innovation curve, because I always ask my clients. In fact, I did a keynote just the other day to a bunch of accountants. I said, look, take a look at it now. Where do you see yourselves on that curve? And then at the end of my keynote, I said, do you want to be on that curve? And everybody said, it's then obviously a personal decision, but it's then working out, well, where do I want to be and where do I need to be on that curve? Because if you're a generation behind, then the guys that are on the left-hand side of that curve are always going to be one step ahead. And it's not so much, and this is relevant to every profession, but it's the technology won't get rid of you. It's the use of technology. The firms that take on the technology are the ones that will succeed. So there was one guy at this conference, for example, he took on 642 clients over COVID.
Wow.
And he grew by 42%. And he said, and he had his systems all set up in the cloud to enable all this to happen. And he said, the primary reason why those clients were so happy to move across was that because their previous firm was not responsive to their needs. So his business has just gone ballistic, is the only way to describe it, because he had his system set up appropriately.
It's actually really interesting, because technology is a real leveler. I mean, I sort of, I don't know where I read it, but there's certain country firms that basically, and I'm talking just, I guess, across accounting and legal, that actually picked up work from city firms.
Yep.
Because they had great use of technology. They had great sort of things in place. Labor costs were actually a bit lower. And they're actually able to utilize, good workforces and things, and they kept their people around and things, and everyone was, they sort of set things up quite well. So they're able to pick up a lot of, and I think, and if you look at it now, I mean, from point of view, the question that, as a consumer of services from professional services, is you ask yourself, well, does it really matter where they are?
100%. And you look at the diaspora from the cities out to regional areas, and yet the work didn't disappear. The quality of the work in 99.99% of the cases didn't go down, and so that's where you start seeing this great divide between suddenly the regional areas are spiking when it comes to real estate prices because people are going, actually, do I really need to be in the office? And the answer is no. So
So that sort of stuff you've been helping firms with, like moving, I guess, the workflow from city into country or areas, or even actually, dare I say, offshore, to actually help in the processing side.
Well, interestingly enough, the offshoring is, I'm seeing that kind of turning around a little bit because given to your point earlier about the lower transactional costs, a lot of firms that I've certainly been dealing with, particularly on the accounting side, because they've got a lot of processing to do, are actually preferring to insource it or onshore it rather than offshore it. Particularly because, as you say, those regional firms are better set up for it now than they ever have been, and they can actually plow through the work a lot more effectively. And so the advantage of being, argument's sake, in the cloud allows you to have that. I've got my city office and regional office where everybody's just churning out the work, and we're all looking at literally singing from the same song sheet, because it's we're seeing the same systems without that horrible. You'd be more than familiar with this. When you go through things like RDP and Citrix and so forth, the screen that you're looking at is different to what it is in the office because all of the, it's just messy. Whereas you can actually have it set up in such a way and secure and locked down and all of the stuff done in the background that actually makes it a lot easier for it to be able to manage that. So access from anywhere.
So is that strategic planning? I guess the strategic planning is something that you actually help firms with, like in terms of planning and dispersing their work and those kinds of things.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things that I do on a regular basis, in fact, I'm right in the middle of doing one right now, where this is an 80-seat firm where they have their old system spread across, I think it's 9 or 10 servers, and it's using old software because it's on those servers. And it's basically saying, okay, guys, what are your goals as a firm? What do you want to be as a firm? So they've been, you're probably familiar with that book, Atomic Habits by James Clear. He talks about you don't rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your systems.
That's right.
And so a lot of the firms that I meet they think, but this is the way that we have to do it, rather than this is the way they want to do it, because the process is constrained by the capability of the systems that they're using. And so the process that I go through is tell me what your goals are. Let me interview the staff, and I interview a bunch of staff. So in this particular round, I'm doing 17 staff so they're all heads of departments and some even down to reception level. And to understand what are some of the challenges and obstacles that we need to overcome in order for everybody to be able to do their work easier. And so it's about building up that. And then if part of that is then, we need to be able to manage the onshoring or the offshoring component, then let's build that in absolutely into what the strategy needs to be, rather than think of it as an afterthought. And so it becomes intrinsic to what we're trying to achieve when we're actually sitting down and mapping out what the future plan and the next 3 to 5 years is going to be for the firm.
I mean, do you think, talking about this sort of city country sort of thing, and I guess work as well, do you think there might be opportunities for like city firms to buy country firms? So they've got everything in place. They've got
huge. I mean, I think it's an untapped resource. It's something that is out there because you have people that go on maternity leave. So I've forgotten what the name. I can't think of the name now. But it's an online resource where the senior lawyers who are on maternity leave do ad hoc work. And so is it Smart Legal? Might be Smart Legal. But it's the opportunity then for a legal firm to take on a regional legal firm with the skill set that exists within that firm. And then as you said, they're at a lower charge out rate, they're at a lower cost rate, for argument's sake, but you're still getting the quality of the work. And I think there's a lot of, I remember dealing with one of the big 4 accounting firms, and they used to outsource overseas a lot of their work. But they found that it was actually costing them more because they had to rework it when it arrived back in country. And so it was this double-edged sword, is that theoretically it's cheaper, but the cost is actually higher. And you have to go through that process to realize that. And I think that's the big difference.
They're probably saving money at the entry, the processing end, and probably like spending more money on the review end. I guess that would be where it would be. Yeah,
Exactly. So more time, turning it all out.
So what sort of innovations are you and trends are you seeing that may well happen in the next couple of years in professional services?
Well, I think one of one of the leading lights that have come through recently is just in the wrapping the HR component around like well-being around the day-to-day, if that makes sense. So rather than focus on the timesheet speak, which obviously that's important, but it's also how is the person doing that timesheet? Are they okay? Are they, it's becoming more of that instead of the grind, which has been the traditional methodology. And I think the grind has actually over the last 400 or 500 years has actually been a negative for particularly the legal firms, because they get stuck in a room, they put someone in there and saying, right, you need to review this document and highlight certain passages on it. And that's, yes, it's an educational, but it's also soul crushing. And I think there's the fallout from that, where people realize, oh my God, am I going to be doing this for the rest of my life? I don't want to do this. And I think both accounting and legal have lost a lot of people in that, because that work for a lot of it can actually be automated. So you're seeing the rise of AI when it comes into, particularly in the legal space. You get machine learning in the accounting space, and that, automating what can be automated. And basically, as I use the expression, taking the robot out of the human. But this but the HR component and the staff well-being, that is something that has previously not been measured before. Now there's solutions that are in the marketplace that you can actually start measuring that and make sure that everybody's okay, which I think is great.
I mean, big challenge is the gap in jobs that are advertised versus applicants. I was reading something about that, I think, in one of the online publications today, about there being some huge gaps in terms of positions being filled. And also, I guess, from point of view of retention as well. I mean, people, there are a lot of opportunities out there right now for staff, I guess, in the accounting and legal markets, and not just here in Australia, but also internationally as well. You've got firms in the US that are actually eyeing Australian professionals, and you've got firms in the UK eyeing Australian professionals, and I mean, there's a lot of opportunities. So I guess having systems in place that recognise well-being. The other issue that sort of actually folds into as well as old succession planning. I mean, basically, at some point in time, the partners will actually move on and want someone to take their spot and actually sell their piece of the business to someone else. So how do you find these people? How do you actually get them in? How do you have technology wrapped around the folks so they can continue to love what they're doing and actually feel like they get some work-life balance? Probably an older term to use, but anyway, and love what they do.
Well, I think it goes back to what I was mentioning about the strategy sessions and the goals. And so I deal with guys and girls, I should say, who they might be have just left a partnership and are setting up by themselves. Or I'll meet the 60-year-old who says, what, I've had enough, but I need to have my system set up so that either someone will want to take on my business and then just selling my fees, or ideally I can promote someone within the business to take on and do that succession planning. So it's both sides of the, but key to that is utilizing the technology and having an effective technology base. Because I'll give you a great example. There was here in Melbourne where it was a 5-partner firm. So it was 4 older partners and 1 junior partner. And the junior partners said, hey guys, we need to spend money on the IT setup. It's getting old and we need to do that. And the 4 partners said, no, we're not going to spend. We're going to retire in a couple of years. We're not interested. And he went, okay, see ya. This is my notice. And he walked out the door. And there happened to be a facilitator, and the facilitator told me this. He said, guys, just stay there for a second. And he went out to the young guy and he said, what's going on? They're about to give you, basically you're going to take on the practice. And he said, did you hear what they said? He said, they're not going to help me at all to fix up the practice. So they're going to expect me to carry all of that burden when they walk out the door. I'm not interested. So I'm leaving. And he went, don't make any rash decisions. So he went back inside and explained the scenario to the other 4 partners. And they went, oh, we didn't think of it that way. Okay, yes, we will spend the money, but you have to spend money to make money.
Is that technology debt something that new partners should all consider in terms of actually whether they do take on the partnership or not?
Oh, look, absolutely. I mean, if you think of I'm an accounting partner. Let's assume I'm an accounting partner, and I walk out at the door to set up my own business. Right now, you can get everything for free. All of your practice management, tax and accounting, and ledger systems. Some vendors, not all, but some vendors will actually give that to you for free, right?
Wow.
So yeah, so it's kind of like, oh, okay. So the cost or the impediment to starting something is essentially a laptop. Do you have a laptop? Yes, no. Can you afford $800 for a laptop? Yeah, okay. Well, afford $1,300 for a decent one, but you'll get all your software for free.
Amazing.
And so you can start doing that. You can set up, and you know how easy it is to set up a business. So you don't have to buy servers. You don't have to do all this sort of things. Now that's your starting point.
Yeah.
And so once you start on that and you start building up, then you might have to look at more complex software, your client base and so forth. But you've started. And what's your cost been at the beginning? Basically nothing. So it's extraordinarily easy to start in the profession these days compared to previous years. And this is specifically in the accounting side of things. But legal is the same. You can walk out the door and there are cloud providers where you can just buy for a couple of $100 a month, bang, you got the whole thing. You don't have to provide the infrastructure. Away you go. You've got everything, your trust accounting, your practice management, all that sort of things. You can turn around that shingle and away you go and you're in business.
Wow.
It's done.
Pretty amazing. So, I mean, yeah, so I guess one of the questions is, in terms of actually like law firms and accounting firms working together, how those guys work together. I mean, how have you seen, I guess, law firms get referrals from accounting firms? Because I mean, my accountant referred me to a law firm, use the law firm services. They're the guys that I actually use now for a lot of the work. So what would you suggest to law firms? What things could they actually know about accounting firms, how to work with them?
Yeah, look, I think there's a trend, and it's been going for a number of years now, which has been particularly amongst law firms in the mid-tiers, which is both legal and accounting are pulling over the expertise from each other. So a lot of the leading accounting firms are not so much pulling tax experts from they're pulling over the tax experts from a legal perspective to bring them in-house. So that's from a strategy perspective, might be transfer pricing, whatever the scenario might be. But the legal firms in turn are pulling over some of the day-to-day accountants to actually be able to do the tax return off of their clients. So there's a bit of cannibalization of the market as we go through. From a referral perspective, it kind of makes sense that if you have someone that you've maybe a client that has come from a previous legal firm and they said, oh yeah, well these guys did a really good job for us when we're there. It's like, oh, maybe I'll give them a call because I have other clients that are in a similar boat. And in essence, you do a back scratching exercise. Now, that doesn't have to be, we're going to get a commission because that has to be disclosed and it could get quite messy. But it's kind of like, look, we've worked with these guys in the past and it works really well. And you might get that knock-on benefit. So I'll give you a great example, David, if I could. It's just a quick one. I had deal with a guy that does some integration and implementations. And he said, tell you what, he said, so I would just refer him work because I don't do integrations, what I do. I'm a high-level strategy and future planning and so forth. And one day he gave me a call and he said, I have got a client, not through you, but I've got a client. It's actually too big for me. Now, he gave me that job and that ended up being, for me, it was like a $17,000, $18,000 job. And that's no expectation of any payment. I give him work, and because I know, like, and trust, and it comes down to that know, like, and trust element, and he gives me work in know, like, and trust. And there's the back scratching exercise that we both trust each other. The clients that we've worked together on trust both of us because the outcomes have been fantastic. And it just works. So it's from that referral network. It doesn't necessarily have to get complicated by I'll give you 10% of this fee and this, so because you'd be surprised at how much will come back and forth into each other's costs, for want of a better word, which basically says, look, I know this guy. I know this guy called David, and he's really good because he did this for me. And David gets the next couple of contracts or engagements after that. It works really, really well.
Would you, I mean, if a law firm sort of said we want to actually build systems and processes and a methodology to actually to build our referrals from accounting firms, is that something that you actually do?
Yeah, well, it's basically sitting down and finding out what the systems they have in order to facilitate that. Because most firms that I've certainly dealt with have no idea where their referrals come from. They have absolutely no idea, or they're not tracking it. Well, generally, they're not tracking. That's why they don't have any idea. And so it could be the Pareto principle, where 80% of their referrals comes from 20% of the people in their network, or it could be that they simply have no clue because they don't even ask the client, "How did you hear about us?" So it's which is quite surprising, because the focus is, "Oh my God, client's walking in the door. I better put the blinkers on and make sure I don't upset them," or whatever. But it's to your point, very early on in the conversation, we're talking about CRMs and attracting new business. Mm-hmm. Accounting firms don't have CRMs, so they rarely can pinpoint who's referring work into them. The legal firms are utilizing CRMs, but they're not necessarily utilizing CRMs for the purpose of capturing the referrals.
Yeah,
they're utilizing for the future business, future promotion of the firm. And so there's these little, and they're only small gaps, but they're little gaps that are in there, which could be easily fixed. But you have to sit back and go, what do we want as a firm? Do we want to try and grow that referral network?
Yep.
And it's great. So where do we start? Like, what has been the stumbling block that has prevented us from doing this properly in the past? And you got to work out what that stumbling block was, and then eliminate that, and then go back to, okay, well, how do we do it? So work out why it hasn't happened, and then unwind that, and then make it happen.
I mean, it's interesting because what I sort of see is that some law firms, I won't name names, but there's some law firms who've got some excellent content they produce, which I guess allows the accounting firms where they're unsure of, legal issues or legal stances or positions or thoughts, they'll actually point them to these websites and point them to the content and say, have a look at this. So I guess law firms and the content they produce, and I guess the content and their websites are actually quite important. The content they produce, the podcast, all the other sort of external facing type services that are out there around information could be quite a useful thing for accountants to latch onto.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's a scenario where it's like the old shampoo ad. It won't happen overnight, but it's going to happen. And people will remember stuff when someone comes up to them at a barbecue, or they're in the office and so forth. The key thing, though, is that, I don't know about you, David, but I know personally, I don't look at accounting websites or legal websites on the weekend. If I go to an accounting firm's website, or if I go to a legal firm's website, there's a reason why I'm there. And so the message that I've always said to these guys, or to this profession, or both professions, is if someone's on your website, there is a reason why they are on your website. Right? So whatever's on your website better be attractive to them. Now, the biggest killer, particularly for accountants, and it's probably legal, is the website saying, we're good at this, we're good at this, we're good at this, and we're good at that, and we're good at that. Because what is it saying? It's all saying it's all about us, baby. And we're not, aren't we fantastic, right? And it's not saying, how can we help you? We need to help you. We're here to help you, here to help clients like David. We're here to help you. And because that's the way that I view a lot of the accounting market and the legal market, is they're not advertising to clients, advertising to each other. It's basically saying, if you're saying that, I'm going to say that as well. And so that's why I say, if someone's coming to your website, there better be you better have really good quality, because someone has referred them to your website. And so the information there you've got there has got to be something that they can go, I can see why I was referred to this website.
That's interesting. So I mean, things like chatbots, do you think they're useful?
Look, nothing beats a face-to-face. Chat boxes, I think people kind of see through them, maybe, because they're all pervasive now. They're everywhere, and especially the ones that do the fake typing in the background.
Oh yeah, shocking.
That's so 1997, I think it was. But it's just kind of like, it's really bad, and so that's where it's kind of it's probably a bad thing. It's because if you want to give something, or if they're there, make it easy for them to contact you. So, but if you have a message on there saying, leave us your details, someone will contact you in the next 26, 48, 72 hours, make sure you contact them in the 24 hours rather than in the 72.
See, there's actually something funny, but I mean, it's about mobile numbers and texts. I mean, I think to myself, if there was a mobile number I could actually contact, and not even ring, but just text, and I knew that basically I'd get some sort of response back, it makes me feel more comfortable than actually having a chatbot responding on the screen. It's more private. So I mean, I've always wondered why that technology. I haven't seen more use of that technology. Of like text this number to get in contact with us. Someone, it's a text back and that sort of stuff, and you know that you're probably it might be interacting with a machine or whatever, but it feels like you're interacting with a person.
Well, yeah, exactly. Yeah. Whereas the chat box is a chat box. I don't know if you've ever had to deal with Telstra, and the chat boxes, and what a soul crushing experience that is. And so if you pop up a chat box, people are just going to go, "Oh God, is this just going to go around in circles?" And to your point, then if you text us and they get a response back, be it automated or whatever, at least they're getting a response. Also, more importantly, it's in the palm of their hand.
That's right.
It's
exactly right.
It's there. It's right in front of them. And going back to my point earlier, if they're on your website, there's a really good reason why they're on your website.
That's
now,
right.
obviously, do you want to leave it? Do you want to leave a mobile number? Some people will, some people won't. And so you got to balance those kind of things out as well. Is that whole privacy and so forth, and data capturing and all of this sort of thing. So there's a number of factors that need to be taken into account as well.
I mean, small business. I think about small business. And I think to myself, like the legal issues and compliance issues and things like that don't actually happen from 9 to 5 or from 8 to 5. They happen all during the day. Go to the mailbox, pick up the letter, and go, "What the hell is this?" And you want someone to talk to and deal with. So it's actually, I mean, I think the biggest area for firms in helping small business is actually that coverage outside of hours.
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh, look, it's 100%. I think, in some respects, I think that is true. But as more and more of those small businesses get online, a lot of that stuff has now been taken care of. The stuff that they used to after hours is actually happening during hours. But there's still those elements where you, as you say, when the business owner comes home and he opens up the mail, and there's an envelope which says, final demand or whatever the scenario is. Maybe I need to talk to someone about this. Then there is an incentive to get that action sooner rather than later. But just on that point, it ends as well the opportunity from the firm, whether they want to be that responsive, like you see them at a lot of representation at police stations. If this has happened, to call us, and we're 24 hours. But from the small business perspective, rarely is anything that urgent that you need a 24-hour lawyer.
No, absolutely. I mean, it's just, I guess there may be some issues that apply to it, but equally there might be some personal issues as well. But look, really, really great discussion today. If people want to find out more about technology, professional services, and what kind of strategies are winning strategies, and how people are actually, what kind of things people are doing, how do they get in contact with you?
Yeah, thank you. So I write extensively on LinkedIn. So that's Alan Fitzgerald, and you'll look me up on LinkedIn. You'll see this ugly mug. But also have a website which is practiceconnections.com.au, spelt the way you'd imagine it to be spelt, unlike most technological websites these days. It's actually spelt the way it sounds. So that's where all my contact details are, and people can get in contact with me or read some of the stuff that I post on LinkedIn anytime.
We'll leave links how to contact you as when we actually publish the article. But thanks so much again, Alan. Really appreciate it. Thanks for your time.
David, thank you very much. And thank you for taking the time out.